Good day and welcome to another Focus On segment with myself, Donovan Morrison. The Richards Bay Industrial Development Zone's mandate has always been to attract domestic and foreign direct investment. The purpose is for these investors to locate their estates in the Richards Bay RBIDZ to ultimately manufacture raw materials for production of goods to boost beneficiation and to stimulate growth. Today we are joined by Donovan, Chimhandamba, the CEO of Nyanza Light Metals, who is one such homegrown investor who will be doing exactly that, expanding his operation towards the Richards Bay RBIDZ. Donovan, thank you so much for joining me today. Give us a bit of an overview of Nyanza itself. What is the business that you are in, and for how long have you been building your entity?
Thanks, Annalie. It's great to be here. So our project or business is in the manufacturing of what we call titanium dioxide pigment, which is used in making paints. We started in 2011, so we're 13 years into it. And when we started with a blank sheet of paper. But our principal fundamental issue that we were driving at was we understood that Africa is largely an extractive industry kind of play. So everyone in Africa, all investments coming into Africa are just focused on mining activities, but very little mineral beneficiation and value addition. So when we looked at the minerals, some of the minerals that we are well endowed with, heavy mineral sands is something that South Africa has. So 22% of the world's titanium reserves lie in South Africa. So we're number 2 globally. So when you look at the Rio Tinto, RBM operations, the Tronoxes, what they're doing along the beach sands is mining what we call heavy mineral sands, and they produce ilmenite, which contains titanium. But all of that is exported with very little beneficiation. So in our case, we said, why don't we set up an operation that actually takes those minerals that are being exported and actually take them through or up the value curve and actually produce value-added products. So our business is basically to look at value addition, and we focused on titanium dioxide and producing titanium dioxide pigment.
So we're using very technical terms, but let's break it down, especially into financial terms. So when the good is exported, we are selling it at a particular price. We are buying it back at a much higher price. But I don't think we understand that until we hear the numbers. So give me an example of exactly how much the price differential is if we do something ourselves versus buying it back when we've provided the initial raw material.
I think it's quite scary. I mean, in our case, ilmenite trades at about $300 a ton. So if we were when we export ilmenite without any further beneficiation from here or anywhere in Africa, that's the price. We buy back titanium dioxide pigment at $3,000 plus per ton. So that's a 10 times upliftment in terms of from the raw mineral ore to the final product. So our question is, who's doing this in the world? This is where the high quality jobs lie. This is where the real value sits in terms of the minerals that we own. So what we're putting here is to say, rather than exporting all of this, why don't we do it locally and bring the jobs locally?
And we've been trying to do this for years. I mean, we've been talking about it, but you are ultimately doing it. Because now what you're talking about, there is obviously cost to actually developing this final product locally. But let's go to the value chain. I mean, there's a good example around many industries that have started, and around them, it just starts to blossom with a whole lot of supportive industries. So if we had to throw forward, what would that look like in the long term?
Thanks, Anna. That's quite an interesting point. So, I mean, one good example is Sasol. I mean, Sasol, 1950, I think that's when they started. 1954, that's when production started. And when Sasol was being built, it was what we see today is just not about Sasol. It's the whole industry, the whole economy that has been built around Sasol. It enabled certain other industries in the plastics and the explosives industries and the fertilizer markets to actually come to fruition. Now, if you look at what we are also doing, there's a whole plethora of industries that will mushroom because of our titanium dioxide pigment project. We need utilities, we need steam, we need compressed air, we need to look at the infrastructure around Richards Bay. It needs to be upgraded, the roads and rail infrastructure. We need to get the supply chain in terms of the logistics, in terms of other locally sourced goods, also to be increased in terms of capacity. So not only are you going to see the benefit just be directly to Nyanza in terms of import substitution and the foreign direct investment, but you're literally going to do what Sasol did back in the 1950s to stimulate a whole new industry.
So the industrial development zones are quite interesting because if you look at the Richards Bay environment, it's desperately in need of redevelopment. Is that the strategy behind the zone itself? And what is it, what attracts you to want to move your operations there? Is it the port capability? So how do you see the landscape between the center of the country as well as Richards Bay?
So there's a lot of things that the IDZ, sorry, I'm saying IDC, but the IDC also quite a significant player in this. But there is, firstly, is proximity to the port. So if you look at some of the bulk raw materials that we use, we have to import. And 85% of what we produce, we have to export. So we have to be by the port. So that's the first thing. Second thing is that the special economic zones have got special incentives. So you've got things like 12I manufacturing incentives where you get an assessed loss. You've got lower income tax regime. You also get certain incentives around the job creation. So when you put that in terms of financial impact to the project, it boosts the viability of the project itself. Now, the other thing in terms of, I think you touched on a point around what's happening around Richards Bay and the economy. Over the last few years, we've seen a lot of hemorrhage around jobs in there. We've seen a lot of the historical old industrial operations scaling down. And that has had a huge impact in terms of the livelihoods around Richards Bay. So coincidentally, because we'll be coming, they will likely benefit from the legacy skills that were created by these industries. But what we're doing is we'll probably bring in new kind of companies for the future, companies that are going to be here for the next 100 years.
I mean, this is no easy feat what you're doing, and you've got a very interesting track record. I mean, you've been in the manufacturing industry. You were part of the Anglo-American nation. You founded, is it the Arcane investment with Anglo-American? So for you, what are your hopes and dreams when you start to venture out and you're going out and you're doing this for yourself? And for Nyanza, ultimately, what do you want? What for you is, I suppose, the thing that you wish to happen in the country?
So I've been fortunate that, my first degree was engineering. I did work in the engineering field. My first job was at Engine Refinery when it was still fully operational. And I've had full training within that. Then I migrated into finance and investment banking. And that almost like rounded me up in terms of understanding the whole side of of bringing investments into the country. So you need to understand the manufacturing and the engineering side of it, but at the same time you need to be able to connect it with the financing of it. Now, going back into starting to do our own investments, what we'd like to see is more of these kind of projects. If we can have 10 Nyanzas in the country happening, I think we'll start seeing the economy move in a certain different direction in terms of industrialization and economic growth. So what we're building as Nyanza, while we're focused on titanium dioxide pigment, it's a capability that's looking at value addition. So we're already looking at other things downstream based on what we're doing, which we can link up with Nyanza, looking at lithium iron phosphate. So these are your electric vehicle or new energy materials that we'll be looking at. We've got other opportunities that other players can be looking at in terms of making titanium nanomaterials, making other different compounds that can be used elsewhere. So from our side, I think Nyanza alone is not enough, but it's a great example in terms of that with perseverance and with the right development partners. In our case, we have Africa Finance Corporation, we have Afrexim Bank, and the DTIC who have been co-funding with us in terms of developing this project. Richards Bay IDZ itself has also pulled its weight. We've seen them coming in financially. They are even doing some site preparation works as we speak. And that's how the kind of partnerships that we want. And within that process, we're also bringing in the communities to try and make sure that we work together and bring all the stakeholders to see this through.
And when we're now in a world where climate change is no longer a myth, we understand that we have a huge challenge, and it's about the sustainability of these operations, but also the sustainability of the environment. Is this something that also does concern you? Because it doesn't help that we continue to take from the earth, and yet we're not protecting the earth that we have.
It's an important factor. You can't design a new plant in this day and not design it around climate change or climate goals, the developmental goals, because then it's a matter of time before you're caught up in a mix where no development financier wants to touch you. So, but not just about the finance. I think it's just important that every operation or business that comes in today must make sure that it has done its best in terms of reducing any carbon emissions, as an example. In our case, we designed out all carbon from our operations. There's no coal. We in our energy mix, we put in renewables in terms of solar. We put in also cogen. So part of our operation releases a lot of heat. We trap that to produce high pressure steam, which we fire through steam turbines to make our own power. So those are some of the initiatives in terms of even lighting and all of those things we've designed right from the beginning to make sure that we're designing a plan for the future, and we can lead by example in terms of the industry. We believe this will be the most modern plant in the world. And on that point, maybe one important point I should highlight is that over the last 34 years outside China, there hasn't been a plant like this built. And in China, that's where we've been seeing these plants being built. Part of it is because of the structural economics in terms of Europe, where we see chemical reagents being very expensive, the logistics being expensive, the labor being very expensive, energy being expensive with the Russia-Ukraine war. And there's massive deindustrialization that's happening there. And it's a huge opportunity for Africa to actually come in and take those industries back to where the extractive minerals or the minerals are being extracted from. And what Nyanza is simply doing, and we already have customers who are migrating from predominantly being supplied by the European industries or the Western industries to saying, can we be supplied by you in the future, because we already see the shutdowns that are happening there. So the climate change costs in terms of these legacy investments in Europe or other countries with old plants, and us coming in with brand new plants, we have a huge opportunity to be at the center of the discussion.
So, and I mean, I think we don't think about that a lot. I think Europe is in trouble from a population that's aging, but we have this young burgeoning population. We also, as you are saying, as well, you're not necessarily a startup. 11 years, is it 11 or 13 years? 12 years down the line, you're not exactly a startup. And I think when it comes to this, though, you need huge government support from a regulatory perspective, from just even infrastructure. Are you finding that we are doing better at being agile to businesses like yours?
I think our project is one clear example where government has supported. Not just by policy, but also financially. They've they've invested quite a lot in the RBIDZ, for example. So the ground that we're taking has been prepared to a state where it makes it very viable for us. So, and in terms of mobilization, government is doing
what they need to
yes.
do. Something about the Western Cape, though, has got a bit of energy about it, I sense. The last time I was there, there seems to be a much more responsiveness, by government for corporates. You've also seen that.
Yeah, no, we've seen that. I mean, obviously, each province has got its own local dynamics, but we've been in Richards Bay for 12 years now. So we kind of feel like we're part of the family, and we exactly know where, the plates and teaspoons are. So we know how to navigate and negotiate our way around that. So it's all about being part of the family, and once you understand how it works, you stop clashing, you start collaborating.
I think we need to see it. It's so hard to imagine the fantastic things that are happening in this country until we actually see them. But I appreciate having you join us today. I think we'll have you back to tell us more about how it's going soon.
Thank you, Zanile. It's great to be here.
And that's how we wrap it up for this conversation. Thank you to my guest joining me in studio, Donovan Chimhandamba, the CEO of Nyanza Light Metals. Thank you so much. I'm Zanile Morrison. It's goodbye for now.